All right. Hi, Cassidy. How are you?
Hello, I am doing great.
I am so excited to be talking to you. For those of you who do not know sweet Cassidy, she is an OG student of Write Your Way to Freedom. One of the first. Do you actually remember what number? I've told you
Eh,
before, but I
Yeah,
forget.
it's either 28 or 29.
Let me look. I'm just gonna pull it up. It's like right here. I have a
One of
hold on.
those two numbers, I'm almost certain.
It's what, 28 or 29? Let's see. Let's
Hmm.
see. I'm like, Cassidy, 29. 29. Student number 29. So
Money nerds unite.
that means that you've been doing this for 5 years. You have been
Yeah.
a copywriter for 5 years. And I'm really excited because more often than not, I try to do these student success stories with people who have only been at it for a few months so that people get to hear from people who are starting out, who are going through all those same struggles and what that looks like. So it's really exciting and unique that we get to talk to somebody who's been at it for 5 years, because I just think that one, not only is that amazing, but two, we're going to get to see kind of what it looks like when you're consistent and you show up consistently for, more than a few months. Um, so I don't know, why don't you share with us a little brief background of like before Write Your Way to Freedom, what made you sign up for it? We'll just do the little like background context thing and then we'll kind of dig into like what life looks like right now.
Okay, that sounds good. And I do have like I guess a bit of a confession.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you remember this, but I was your very first student success story in like June or July
Oh my
2019.
gosh, I
The
didn't
very
know
first one.
that. The very first one.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
I
if
didn't
you
know
go
that.
back and watch that video, here's my confession. I went back and watched that video for the very first time today.
Oh my God.
In preparation for our call, I have been terrified to go back and look at it. And I think it's because I remember how nervous I was in the moment. And I was like, that is just going to be so cringy. And first of all, it's hilarious to see the like tech setup I was using. I think we were both on our phones. And every single time I moved my phone, you just heard.
Oh my God.
Um, so that's come a long way. But also, like, it was, I don't know. I'm so glad I went back and watched it today because my heart just melted for like that version of Cassidy that was like doing the thing and had like a little bit of success and was like starting to dream bigger, but also super scared. And it was just, it was such a sweet thing.
Oh, I love that. Now I'm gonna have to go check that out. That's
Yeah.
so funny. I'm sure we were
Yeah.
both just like, huh? What are we doing?
For real, for real. I think we did it through Facebook Live and you texted me before and you were like, we need to do it vertical because like that's the format we're going to use. And now like they've all come so far. We've come so far, Sarah.
The text come so far. We've come so far.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Okay, so just a little bit about my background. I bought Write Your Way to Freedom in December 2018. And at the time, I was living in Georgia. I was making $32,000 a year as an academic advisor. I knew that in 2 months, the lease on my apartment was running up and I was moving cross country to Seattle. I had no idea what I was going to do for a job. Um, I didn't really want to keep doing academic advising because honestly, it didn't pay that much more in a high cost of living area like Seattle than it did in the very rural town I was living in Georgia. And so I was like racking my brain, trying to figure out what I could do. Lo and behold, as with most people in the course, got your
Yeah.
Instagram ad. And truthfully, my mindset was, what do I have to lose? Like, I already know that I'm not going to have a job in 3 months. Like, what if I bought this course and really tried to set myself up for success and just see if I can do something with it?
Mm.
So I bought the course because I was working at a university. I bought it during this period where like the university was closed for 2 weeks. So that whole like winter break while the university was closed and I didn't have to work, I like every single day I just woke up and for at least like 3 or 4 hours a day, I was like hammering hard on modules. So by the time like winter break ended and work began again in January, I had already like gone through the mindset modules. I'd started handwriting copy. I had created my 3 portfolio pieces and I'd built my website.
Dang.
Yeah. So I did like all of that within that 2-week period. And then when work started back in January, I was so busy that I pretty much put it on the shelf. Because by that point, I pretty much gave a 2 months notice the way academic advising worked. You usually like advise your students, like maybe you advise 20 to 30 students a week until like registration begins in the spring. But because I was leaving in pretty much like a month and a half, I was advising all of my students in that month and a half crunch time instead of spreading it out. So I was like, there's no possible way I'm going to have the energy to do anything beyond what my full-time job commands. So then once we moved out here in March, all I had to do is start cold emailing. So that's what I started to do. And within like 1 week, I found my first client.
Did you
Yeah.
start out in the
And
finance niche?
I did. So a little bit about my like educational background. I have always said and still kind of believe that like I didn't have any finance experience prior to choosing this niche. That said, I do have an MBA, but like I don't feel like it's done. Like none of my clients have ever asked me what my degree is. I don't think a lot of them even know that I have an MBA, and I wasn't working in finance or anything like that. I have like a bachelor's in public relations. Um, but anyway, I just had a personal interest in personal finance. I was trying to pay off my student loans at the time. I was trying to be really meticulous about like not taking on high interest debt and stuff. And whenever I was going through the niche module, I think I originally had some other ones written down, like maybe I would want to write about like zero waste and sustainability and stuff like that. But finance was like the one thing where I knew no matter what, this was a topic that I would want to learn about forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked it because it was also a topic that as I learned and wrote stuff for my clients, I could also then apply it back to my own life, which I thought would be like a really nice perk. So yeah, I started out in finance, but the interesting thing is because finance was like such a far away and removed niche, like I didn't really understand what and all it entailed. So in the beginning, I was only going after like financial advisors and financial management firms because
Mm-hmm.
in my brain, like that was the finance niche. Like,
Right.
and this is something I know that you've talked about before where you kind of don't see like the limitless possibilities that exist within a niche until you really get into it. So we can talk about how even though my niche is still finance, I think it's completely different than it was when I did my success story back in 2019. And now I feel like I'm kind of in a niche that I didn't even know existed, but like really, really love.
Mm-hmm. So what is it? Like, tell us a little bit about the
Okay.
niche now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that I primarily write for finance brands. And what I mean by that, some examples, like some of my clients are Forbes Advisor, NerdWallet, Money, Consumer Affairs, Market Watch. Like they're these websites that exist purely to help people make better financial decisions with their money. So they're not like financial advisors where they're selling services or like actually helping people tangibly like touching their money. They're more just like content sites, but I feel like just calling them content sites is like a little bit of a disservice, but that's kind of the umbrella that they fall in. And the only type of copy that I do is articles, which is
Yeah.
also like another shift that's happened. And in the
I think
beginning, I
that's
thought,
so huge. Like, I'm so excited for people to hear that just because, and we can dig into it further, but like, sorry, I'm like, that's insane and so good for people to hear. So I have
yeah,
to
it
applaud
is. It
you.
is. Yeah, because similar to probably a lot of people, I thought I would start out with blogs and then I would move on to higher paying copy, like websites, landing pages, email sequences, and like that's where the money would be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that has turned out not to be the case. And I've just realized over the years that really all my clients need help with is articles, and they're willing to pay like good money for those articles. So I'm
Yep.
okay with it.
Articles, blogs for some people, just so we, cover some
Mhm.
people like, are articles blogs, articles.
Yeah.
Um,
I use those terms interchangeably. So if there's a difference, I don't know about it.
no, it's not. That's why I just wanted to make sure that we like said that for people wondering the same thing. Um, that's amazing because that's something that I've actually come across in like some of the more like one-on-one mentorships that I've done. Is where I think people have this idea that that's and in part is probably perpetuated by me because I'm like, oh, it's the low-hanging fruit. It's easier to get your foot in the door with because it's not necessarily direct response. You don't have to have numbers to like get that first client. Um, some people I think feel like you have to move beyond that in order to have a like quote unquote legitimate copywriting business. And it's not true. Like you can have an incredible amount of success. And I just like love that part of your story. And I think it's a really good reminder, especially in today's world with AI, you know, where people seem to think that like that's going to be the first thing to go. And I'm seeing so far that it's not. I think there was a perception at first, and then pretty quickly people realize it's just like not where they need it to be. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, so I guess we can go ahead and get to like the punchline that was in the email. So, my income has been the biggest roller coaster it's ever been this year alone compared to all of the previous years. But like the biggest thing is since August, I have consecutively had minimum 20K months, like
Mhm.
every year. This month I'm projected to make like 22K, which will be like another record breaking thing. All
Yeah.
of it's from blog posts. Um, and the reason why I'm able to do, and I usually do like anywhere from 30 to 40 articles a month. Most of the time, I do them completely on my own. If I'm feeling really strapped, every once in a while, I'll maybe like outsource for so articles to an assistant copywriter. But for the most part, every single month, like it's just me. But the reason why I'm able to keep up like that level of articles is because of AI. And my general consensus, like, of course, it's new. Who knows what it will look like in 5 or 6 months, a year? No one knows. But like in and of itself, it's not good at producing a high a high quality level article in and of itself. You really need to know like what inputs to give it and like how to feed it prompts and finagle it and like tell it what voice to use. Like there's a lot of thought that goes into getting it to produce anything
Mhm.
that's of high quality. Um, who knows if it will be like that forever, but I personally don't have any concern or worry. And who knows if this will be me being naive. We'll see. But I don't have any
The
worry, and I
next
don't
five
think you do
years.
either. Yeah, right. I don't have any worry about copy or like AI taking my job. And I kind of equate it. I think I actually got this analogy from Sarah Check. But just about how like when automatic sewing machines came out, like everyone who sewed for a living thought that like these machines were going to take their jobs, but they still needed people who had skills enough to be able to work the automatic sewing machines. And
Mhm.
I feel like it's kind of paralleled in AI. Like you still need to have the copywriting techniques and the copywriting skills to be able to recognize good copy, but also get it to produce good copy.
Mhm. No, 100%. And I think I don't know. I just think the other thing that I thought we would see and is with AI specifically is that it would get better really quickly. And I'm not seeing that. It seems to me like it's kind of like is what it is for right now. Again, maybe that will change, but it's not improving very fast. And that's another thing that's like kind of surprised me. I was like, I thought it was like AI. Like, isn't it supposed to be like getting better?
Yeah.
And
Okay. If anything, I almost feel like there have been times where it's regressed a little bit, where,
Mhm.
and I don't know if it's because it's getting like more data from people who are testing it out, but there have been some weeks where I've been using it and I've just been like, what has happened to you? Like,
Are you okay?
you are not the robot I knew a month ago. Get it together.
Oh, maybe
But
he's just having a tough season, like we all do. You know what I mean? It's like
it happens.
maybe poor Chat GPT needs to be checked in on a little bit more, see how it's doing
Yeah.
emotionally. Uh, so what would you say? we have a good question. What would you say has
Mhm.
been the biggest factor in reaching your level of income?
Okay, honestly, it's a lot of factors, like maybe 4 or 5, and if you want to dig into them, we
Yeah,
can.
let's hear them.
Um, okay, so I'll tell a little side story and then we can go back into this. It so I've been freelancing since 2019, and it's funny how you can look back over the years and begin to like pluck out these little themes. And I don't know if this has happened to you, Sarah, but you're like 2019, I if I could sum it up in one phrase, it would be this. And then 2020, I could probably sum up in this phrase. And like it's only in hindsight that you can kind of look back and see how your business has been evolving and like all of these little decisions that you thought were little at the time that ended up playing like a bigger role in what your business looks like today. Um, but for me, like 2019 was my I can't believe that I'm doing this year. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like my truly my only goal was to replace like my $2,500 a month salary. And that felt like this really big, grand, audacious goal. And then I was my stretch goal was like maybe I'll be making 5K months by the end of 2019. And that didn't end up happening. But then 2020 was more of my year of like, I'm so burnt out that I'm considering taking this full-time job that pays $20,000 less than what I'm earning right now because the thought of having one client and paid time off sounds so much better than just like the 50 plus hours I'm putting in now. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
definitely my year of burnout. And which this is one of the reasons I would equate some of my success to today. I had a lot of hourly clients at the time. And this is something that you actually helped me work through. I was so burnt out in 2020. And you were actually the one that was like, you need to stop charging hourly. Like you're never gonna hit these income goals if someone is paying you even 40 or $50 an hour as a freelancer. So that was like one shift that I made. So 2020 was like my wake up call that like I need to get my crap in order and make some changes because I've created kind of like this fake 9 to 5, more like an 8 to 6 or something that I really, really hate.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel like I have any freedom, which write your way to freedom, right? Like missing a key part of that. So then 2021 became my year of like, let's work smarter, not harder. Let's try to like undo some of these mistakes that, I mean, everything served its purpose, right? Like that hourly client in 2019 really helped me get to 5K months, but then I outgrew them in 2020 and stuck with them when I knew I shouldn't. And then it became this obstacle. It's like everything serves its purpose. And then 2022, right? Like that's kind of my underlying motto moving forward is like, let's figure out how to work smarter, not harder. But then 2022 is like really when I began to see like the fruits of that labor and I started to feel like, oh, I can take a week off in January and like still hit my income goal or like, I can go on a 2-week trip in August and still hit my income goal. Like that's when all of those things began to happen. And then this year has also been like, I feel like this is what my freelance business should have been all along. And I'm really glad that I'm here now. Like that's kind of the
Yeah.
general theme for
Yeah.
this year. Do you recognize themes like that in your
Oh,
life or business? Okay.
100%. And it's touching on something that I feel like I say a lot. And it's one of those annoying pieces of advice where it's like a couple of things actually. One, you can hear good advice all day long. Like I always like right out the gate was like, never work hourly, never work hourly. I remember when you told me you were working hourly, I was like, Cassidy. And you're like, okay, okay, okay. And it's not until you experience the heartache of your own like choices that you finally get to a place where you're fed up with them and you choose to do something different. So the way I often describe it is like you can hear advice all day long, but it's not until you like have the experience and then like learn it and feel it in your bones where you're like, okay, that's why I need to do this thing. Because it's just like it just advice doesn't stick until you come to know it, you know?
It really doesn't. And my like perfect example of this that I always go back to is in your module where you're talking about like right out the gate, you should charge $200 a blog post, which what probably breaks down to like 20 cents a word. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing that advice, like even back in 2018, 2019, and being like, that's good advice for someone, but that's not good advice for me. Like,
Mhm.
I can't charge that much yet. So instead, I'm going to charge my first client 8 cents a word, which is exactly what happened. Um, and yeah, that advice took years to stick with me. Like I pretty much said 8 cents a word as my base in the beginning and then spent years trying to work back up to what I should have been charging all along.
Yeah, but it's okay because I think that's where you create like non-negotiables, right? Because if you hadn't had that experience, you'd be more willing to take clients who are like, oh yeah, maybe 10 cents a word, it's all necessary. Like all of the experiences we have are necessary for leading you to ultimately like what you want your business to be. I will say that like I also have like I resonate with everything you're saying and have experienced similar seasons in my business. Something that I think I've learned from doing this for so long, and I'm curious to hear if you have experienced this at all too, is now sometimes when I have like a mentor that I really trust, if they give me advice, even if I'm like, oh no, I don't think I can do it, da, 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 I just am like, I'm just gonna listen to them and skip that heartache season. Like I'm just gonna listen and I'm gonna do it and I'm not gonna like. And so I'm able to now put my own like opinions about things sometimes like on pause and on hold and just like take the advice and do it the way that they tell me. And I think that's helped me a lot actually. So I don't know if you experience that now.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Like I feel like now, like I would consider you one of my biggest mentors in like the business space in general. And I feel like now I'm to the point where I would be like, whatever Sarah says, like even if imposter syndrome, like just do the thing. But I also feel like that's come with the experience of not listening to
Mm-hmm.
advice and having to figure things out the hard way, and then having that knowledge of being like, you are currently where you never thought you could ever be. So
Mm-hmm.
if this person is telling you that this thing is possible, even if there is a voice in your head being like, but that would never be possible for you. Like I now have proof that it can be.
Right. Right.
So
And that comes with this process, right? Of like having proof that things can be wildly different than anything you've experienced before. And once you start to like really know that, I mean, you can grow exponentially really fast and like really hard because it's like you can almost like sidestep some of the mindset stuff because all the mindset stuff is the same thing. It's just like different versions, different flavors of the same imposter syndrome, self-doubt, and like I have it too with like things in my business when I'm like growing in an area, but it's like after a certain amount of time, you're like, okay, hi, you're here. I kind of don't have time to like wrestle with you anymore. I'm going to acknowledge you, but I'm just going to like take this advice and like do it anyway. And it just kind of gets a little bit easier because it's like, well, it's self-trust. You're like growing that self-trust muscle. And I don't know. I see that
yeah.
in such a big way.
Yeah, I also have so much compassion for like people's anchor points and also like my own anchor points because and you and I have talked about this before too. Like, I hate the phrase charge what you're worth because
Mhm.
I feel like what you think you're worth is so rooted in like maybe how much your parents earned or like what you saw was possible in your like one little sphere or bubble. And so for me, like I came from this situation where I was earning $32,000 a year. And even though I wanted to earn more, I felt like I should be really grateful for that salary because
Mhm.
I was a 22-year-old earning that money with one job. Whereas in my like home growing up, I had a mom who worked three jobs to make $32,000 a year and had two kids to provide for. So I was like a 9 to 5 for $32,000 a year. Like that sounds like such easy money. Like, of course, sign me up. And so I carried that mindset then into my freelance business where I was like, well, as long as I'm making what breaks down to 15 or $16 an hour, like I should be grateful because now it's even easier. Like I'm not having to earn $32,000 in a 9 to 5. I'm earning $32,000 on my own, which is like a step up above, but I
Yeah.
still I wasn't allowing myself to dream bigger and to be like, how much should I be charging for
Yeah.
this thing?
Your story is such a perfect example of like what commonly happens, where you break free from the 9 to 5, but then you create something that you just like, you make kind of like a monster of a situation that's like way more work and harder. And you start to think that like the 9 to 5 sounds good. In fact, whenever I hear people who go back to the 9 to 5, I'm like, oh, I wish I could have like chatted with you about what could have changed to make it just easier, right? And then having to sort out and go through, what do you need to change to make this like what you really set out to do? Because so often I experience it too. I tell that story all the time, where I realized I was like, why am I sitting down like from 9 to 5 every day? Like it's been years, but it's so much of it is just like conditioning and the things that we think we should be doing. Just playing out, and it's like these invisible parameters that are we put around ourselves almost without even realizing it. And I don't know, so your story is like a perfect example of that. And when you say things like, this my business is what it should have like always been, I don't think you would have had the like the non-negotiables, the boundaries, the experience, working through all the money mindset stuff, which is important too, to until you were ready for it. I think it all like happened as it was meant to happen, but obviously
Yeah.
wish you could save Cassidy in 2020 from from
Yeah,
herself.
that was an interesting situation because I was actually offered a full-time job by one of my hourly clients.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually the wake-up call for me to be like if I'm willing to just work for this one client for less than what I'm making with like 7 or 8 clients, then I need to work
Change some
something
things.
out and set some boundaries because it's not happening. So yeah, I know earlier Seychelle asked the question about like the biggest factors, and I said there were 4 or 5, and then I went on a tangent. So we
Oh,
we can circle back to that a little bit if you want to.
yeah, no, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, so in saying that, like one of the biggest factors early on was just letting go of my hourly clients.
Mm,
Um, because I was probably like the one hourly client that offered me a full-time job, I was working for them 25 hours a week every week. Like just for them. And the way it was set up, I was just they averaged out that like each article should take you 2 hours. That was like a time limit that they set on every article. So for 25 hours a week, I was trying to write one article in 2 hours and then just like crank out as many of those as I could. And then I had another hourly client that I was working at least 5 hours a week for, on top of like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 regular like per project clients. It was way too much. So letting go of those hourly clients is really like what gave me a ton of freedom back, because that's when I realized that like I can take Friday off if I get all of my work done ahead of time. Like I don't have to ask this hourly client if I can work 5 less hours for them or try to squeeze those 5 hours into the other 4 days. It was just a nightmare. So like that was definitely one big factor. Um, Another one was just charging more. So even around that time, like in 2020, I think I was still charging like 200, maybe 250 a blog post. Um, and I remember, I think it was leading into 2021, I had this post-it note above my computer that said, don't charge anything below $400, because I was like, I was trying to work myself up to like charging higher rates. And another big factor, honestly, that this I will tell this story forever because this lady was just such an angel. But in the beginning of 2021, I hopped on a discovery call with a person and I was pitching her my rates. And at the time, my new rate that I was charging was $350. So it wasn't quite to $400 yet. And I remember I was like getting to the part in the conversation where we talked about rates and stuff. And I was like, I charge $350 for a blog post. Like, this is everything that it includes, like, really nervous to pitch her that rate. And she was like, I'm just going to be completely honest with you. Like, I really believe in freelancers being charged what they're worth, especially women freelancers. And I can tell you that we can pay you at least $500 an article. And that was like the light bulb moment that really clicked. Like, you talking about advice doesn't stick until it sticks. Like, it took this woman telling
Mm-hmm.
me that I needed to raise my rates for me to never question again that I
Mm-hmm.
should be charging at least $500 a blog post, because she like worked for a prominent brand in the industry. I had already had similar clients under my belt. But yeah, as soon as she said that, I was like, light bulb moment, this will be my rate moving forward. And that was like another leap, because I pretty much went from charging like maybe 250 to 350. Like at every point in time, you always have clients that are paying you different rates just because some came on earlier, and you
Yeah.
know, it's kind of a mess. No one's ever really paying you the same exact rate across the board unless you're just really good about keeping everyone in line. Um, but anyway, so yeah, my rates pretty much went from like 250 to 350 to like $500 as a minimum. Um, and
I
that
love that.
definitely helped too. I know. I love her so much. That was the only time I ever talked to her, but I'm like, you are a core memory in my mind forever.
Yeah, that's so huge. We need like moments like that can really stick with you and be like absolute game changers. So I love that. I love that you had that. Are there more for things that you implemented into your business?
The other big one was really just community. Like,
Mm,
and specifically, even some of my like closest in real life friends, I would say probably 90% of them are just from Write Your Way to Freedom. Um, but just, yeah, like being in a community that opens up your mind to what's possible. Like, maybe every person is wired differently, but I am the kind of person that needs tangible proof that this person is doing this thing. Therefore, it is possible for someone, so it could be possible for me. Like,
mhm.
I need examples like that about everything. And I remember last year, July 2022, I went to the in person event, and there were so many things that I had been sitting on for years up until that point, like maybe trying out having an assistant copywriter. I've now started the second website called Money Hungry Freelancers. I had been sitting on that idea for over a year, and it took me like going to the in-person Write Your Way to Freedom event, really connecting with people and sharing my big, scary, like ugly duckling ideas with them, and then being like, this is so possible. Like, or like, here's how I'm doing it. Like, I've been working with an assistant copywriter for over a year. Like, here's what this process looks like. Like, it really took having those examples for me to then be like, okay, let's rework your processes. Like, let's get some things in place. And let's just aim a little bigger.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I know. The people in our community are just seriously like the best, like seriously the best. They've become my friends too. So funny. It's like when you're like, oh, how do you know that person? I'm like, this online community is writing community. And now we all hang out. It's seriously the best because that is how you expand your horizons and like what your sense of like possibility is. Um, so Seashell also asked, what's one parameter you built into your business that you wouldn't get at a 9 to 5? Probably
Okay.
lots.
What's one parameter you built into your business that you wouldn't get at a 9 to 5?
Or
What?
something in your business that you couldn't get into in a 9 to 5.
Okay, I don't know if I'm thinking about the question the right way, but like the first thing that comes to mind is like not having to ask for time off. Is that, or am I thinking about the
Yeah,
question the
no,
wrong way?
that's what I was thinking too. Like not having to
Okay.
ask for time off,
Yeah.
time off
And
money.
I've recently talked about this with someone because I feel like accruing PTO is one thing, but then actually, especially if you're a people pleaser, which I am a recovering people pleaser, but actually feeling like you can take that time off, even though you have it built up, is such a huge thing, because I feel like it's so easy to have a boss that like guilt trips you into being like, I don't know how we're gonna survive without you, or like this coworker is gonna have to handle this for you while you're gone. And like all of a sudden
I
your
know.
responsibilities are split between people. And you know, you're like somehow damaging the company by taking this time off that you are entitled to and deserve. And I just know myself enough to know that if I was still in a 9 to 5, it would be so difficult for me to take time off, knowing that it's inconveniencing someone else. Um, and I did the math a few weeks ago. I think by the end of this year, including like some really fun work trips, because I have been to like other events this year. I will have taken like 65 days off of work this
Oh,
year, which
that's
I
a
feel like, and I have no guilt or remorse or anything. It's just pure joy when I take a day off work, and I know that that's something I would never experience in a 9 to 5. I would be guilt ridden.
yeah, that is huge. 65 days. That's amazing. That's like 2 whole months.
I know.
Like,
Yeah.
that's amazing. I love that. Like time autonomy is one of those things that I try. Sometimes I have moments where I try to imagine like if I had to get a 9 to 5, and I'm like, I don't know that I could do it. Like I don't know that I could do it. Like I'm like I have to go into an office and then somebody tells me I have to be there. I don't know. I don't know. It would be wild.
Yeah.
Be so
It
wild.
really would be.
Can we share the story? Because it's my favorite of when you shared it with me, but recently it was when you came because you came to the very first in-person Write Your Way to Freedom event, which was in 2019.
Mhm.
Um, and apparently I did an exercise there. I'll let you share that story, but I would love to share it if you're okay with it because it's so
Yeah.
fun.
As soon as you said, "Will you share the story?" I was like, I already know what you're gonna say.
Okay.
Um,
I didn't
yeah,
even need to give it context. Will you share the story?
the story. Capital THE. Okay, let me just set the scene for anyone listening. I went to the first Write Your Way to Freedom event. It was in September 2019, so just a few months after our first success story call. Probably less than 6 months into my copywriting journey. And you had us write this or do this exercise where we wrote down on a piece of paper how much we wanted to make next year. So I, with shaky hands, wrote down $100,000 like for the year. Like that's how much money I wanted to be making. And at the time, I was like, this is an impossible goal. There's absolutely no way I can do this. And then you had the audacity to ask us to double that number. And in my memory, okay, so this happened in 2019. I'm recalling this story to Sarah earlier this year. And I was like, do you remember how you asked us to 5 times the number that we wrote down? And she was like, I didn't ask you to times it by 5. I just asked you to double it. But like in my mind, she was asking such a big thing. And like the number felt so impossible that, yeah, in my mind, you asked us to times it by 5 instead of 2.
I I know when you told me that you were like, you told us to 5 exit. And I was like, I've done that exercise multiple times and it is always double it, my friend. And so you had to write down $200,000.
Mhm.
And and then because the point of that exercise is to get people to notice what comes up, notice all the thoughts that you have where you're like, impossible, can't happen, no way, like she's crazy, because it made people really emotional. It always does. And still even like this many years later feeling like it was 5x that, when you are like well on your way to that, my friend, like it's so within reach.
Yeah.
Does that feel like, what has that done for you as far as like noticing other people's audacious goals or hearing other audacious goals or having audacious goals for you? What, yeah, like what has that done for just how you see all of that now?
So I feel like it's taken me years to get to this point, but I do feel like I'm at the point now where I hear of someone, like even someone making 80K a month. I'm like, I have no idea how I'm going to get there, but I do believe that that could be possible for me. Like, right? Like, I don't have a plan, could be 5 years, who knows? But now, whenever I hear someone doing something really big and audacious, I don't have what used to be my first initial thought, which was, that's nice for them, but that could never be possible for me. And that probably still bubbles up sometimes with some things in different areas of my life, but at least in like the business world, I feel like that story has been rewritten to where now I'm just like, oh, that's really, really cool. And I do think that that could be possible for me one day.
I love that. I love that so much. I remember when you shared that with me, I was like, this is like one of my favorite stories ever. I put it in my book. So
Oh,
you're sealed in the book now too.
yeah. It was so cute when I was listening to my success story before you at the very end, you were what's one big, like kind of audacious, scary goal that you have? And I was like, 8K months. And I was so scared. And
Really?
you were like, have you ever said that out loud to anyone before? And I was like, no.
Oh, I have to go back and watch
And I'm
this.
like, I just
Really
want to
so
pet your
sweet.
hair. Yeah.
And now you're like well beyond that. It's amazing. What you've done is so amazing. And truly, like, I just want, because it's so easy to hear stories like these and not realize like the hard work that goes into it. And so I love that you like touched on the rough years and the years that taught you some hard lessons and things like that. Because this isn't like stories like this are not meant to be, I don't know. Sometimes I think people take it and forget that it's meant to be expansive and it can make people feel small, but it's really the result of like showing up, learning lessons over and over again, working really hard, learning from mistakes, from setting things up in ways that are like really made life harder, course correcting. Anything else you want to add? Like
Yeah.
years
Okay. So,
probably.
yeah, last year at the in-person Write Your Way to Freedom event, Jacob McMillan was like a guest speaker for one of the sessions. And he told this story about how building a freelance business is almost, and I'm probably gonna, this is my own take on his analogy, but it's it's like you're at the beginning of this hallway and like you think that you see straight ahead and like you know what your business is going to be like or like what's possible for you, but then as you start walking down the hallway you start to notice, oh, like there's this corridor off to my left or like there's this little path off to my right, and then maybe you take one of those and you realize, oh, there's also like another corridor that juts off of this hallway. And so like life is so unpredictable that there's no way that you can plan for what your freelance business is going to look like 2 or 3 years from now. Like, and if you would have told me, like, even if you would have told like the 2020 or like 2021 version of me, like, you would have a 20K month in 2023, I would have been like, I don't believe you. There's absolutely no way that could be possible for me. But it's just in like making all of these little shifts, like you said, course correcting, like trying to work through your money mindset and what feels possible for you, just like working through all of that. You have no idea and there's no way for you to foresee like how that can compound and like radically change your business in your life if you just like trust the process, take the baby steps, like keep forging ahead and slight edging it.
Yeah. And following like little open doors. Like I think that's been a big part of my journey and probably yours too. Most people I feel like who stick with anything long enough to actually like see real results is being open to opportunities that are unexpected and kind of like allowing for that curiosity and being like, what's going to happen over here. And sometimes the lesson you learn is like not the one you thought you were going to learn and not a fun one, but it always informs like other things in your future. And yeah, so I love the image of the like hallways because I feel like that's so much more accurate than like, I don't know, a path or something like that.
Yeah, I think Emily also talks about like you can't steer a car that's like not that you're not driving, you know?
Yeah,
It's
that's
like
such
you
a good
have
one.
to start, like you just have to take action and start like
You
just
have to have
any
momentum.
momentum you have. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, gotta wrap it up with this question. What's your new big goal? So we can look back
Yeah.
in 5 years and be like, oh, how cute.
Yeah. Okay. So, one, I guess, more like passion project that I'm working on, and it's just kind of starting to add more like passive income
Mhm.
to my business. So, um, I'm building out Money Hungry Freelancers, which is a platform dedicated to helping freelancers like manage their money and stuff like that. And I've I've done a little bit with it this year. It goes back to building momentum. Like I've built a little bit of momentum, but primarily my main focus still has been on freelancing. So my goal is just to kind of walk down that hallway a
Mhm.
little bit more and see where I can take that and like what it turns into. That's probably like my one thing. I usually like always set income goals for the year, but this year was one of the first years where I was like, I actually want my goals to be more like process
Mhm.
oriented. So, like one of my goals, especially for money hungry freelancers this year, was just to experiment with no expectation. Like,
Mhm.
with no monetary expectation because I'm an Enneagram type 3, which is the achiever. Like you always strive to be like, I hit this income goal. Let me see if I can beat it. And then it just compounds and that becomes your
Yep.
entire life. But to
Mhm.
really strip that down and be like, let's just focus on like your feelings and like your growth and, like let's just see if you can launch this product and it doesn't matter how it goes as long as you did it. Like that is the win. So just like carrying that mindset into the years to come.
I think that's a really beautiful mindset, especially to carry into like digital products, because it's the whole process and being successful at the process is all about experimentation. It's about testing things, trying things, and you really have no idea. I mean, even I have like a lot of experience in digital products, and still like I'm always surprised. I'm always like, oh, that went way better than I expected, or oh, that went not great, you know? And so I think that's a really great attitude to bring to that. It also keeps the pressure off of it. So it can be the thing that you enjoy. And I think that matters too for the success of digital
Yeah.
products is I think people really can pick up on if you are enjoying it and you're passionate about it and you care. So I think that's really cool. In fact, anyone here, if you are interested, money hungry, how can they find money hungry freelancers?
Yeah. So moneyhungryfreelancers.com. I'm also on Instagram at moneyhungryfreelancers. And I do have like some free resources for freelancers as well. Like I have an email newsletter. You can download a free guide that walks you through like the business bank account I use or business retirement account I use, like how I budget with a regular income and stuff like that.
It's so the resources Cassidy creates are super, super helpful. I've even like shared them with the community and my email list and things like that. So if you're interested in getting the roller coaster that is freelancing, uh,
Yeah.
monthly income like under control and feeling more solid in it, that's what Money Hungry Freelancers is all about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, so good to catch up with you.
Yours
As
too.
always, thank you for being
Another call in
here.
5 years.
Yes, I'll see you there. We'll see what's happening. Oh my gosh, I can only imagine, Cassidy. It's going to be amazing. So,
Yeah.
and
Can't
it's
either.
like, I really believe that like making your first $1,000 online is actually the hardest. It's like each like level is actually way more difficult, I think, than like the next and next and next.
Okay. I
Obviously,
know.
the point. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know we're trying to wrap up. You bring up a great point. Just from my own personal experience, getting to 10K months was so much harder than getting from 10K to 20K months.
Oh yeah,
Like
100%.
like this has felt so easy because the changes that I needed to make were so minuscule in comparison to like pretty much the overhaul I had to do to break from like 7K months to 10K months.
100%. I think the car momentum image like works really well here because it's the difference between like pushing a car to get it started and then you eventually like have that momentum because when you're first starting out you're learning an extraordinary amount of things, like so many
Much.
things, and as you solidify each skill and you get better and better at each skill, it gets easier and easier. So
Yeah,
100%. So
I
yeah,
believe
in
it.
5 years, you'll be at 100K months. Can't wait.
Let's see.
Thanks for being here,
But
Cassidy. It's always a
yeah.
pleasure. And thank you guys for being here. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
All
thank
right. We'll
you.
see you in the community. Bye.
Bye.
Stay tuned.